We're dreaming in the dark. We are nothing more than dust. Search but you stay lost. We are reaching for the stars, but we're making this too hard. And I wonder where you are. Mysterious, that's the part you always show. 'Cause you're too curious. Maybe you should take it slow. Mysterious, that's the part you always show. 'Cause you're too curious. Maybe you should take it slow.
All right. Let's try this again. Different format. It seems that StreamYard is working for the moment. I want to concentrate on a different book here. It's called The Life of a Drug Addict. I don't know if you've ever had any experiences with drug addiction or anything of that sort, but if you have, you understand the dynamics of how it affects the family unit and everything in between. You know, it's never something that is gradual. It is always something that kind of overtakes the family fairly quickly. And most of the time, people don't know what to do once it happens. So I'm going to start reading this book, and I'm going to go off screen because I'm not feeling the background right now. So can y'all still hear me? Is it still sounding clear? Can you hear the dogs going crazy? I don't know what I don't know what's going on in the air tonight. It's like there's a lot of stuff happening. It's not a full moon. We just had one. So I don't know what the deal is. So let me start this book. Um, it starts by saying disappointment has a way of beating you down. It settled into my life like a cancer at a very early age and never left. Its strength is overwhelming and it tears down relentlessly, screw upon screw, turn after turn, until it forces you to seek shelter in the most unorthodox ways imaginable. Over the years, I've tried to make sense of the situation I find myself in, and always return to the fact that religion was the most corrosive agent my young soul had to deal with. In fact, I was baptized in its ring of fire on a regular basis for my first 16 years, and the fact that I resisted those who sought, who sought to warp me with its ideology did not make my adolescent years very easy. The reality of such exposure is more prevalent than you might think. Normal kids in normal homes grow up sweet and pretty. But if you're exposed to what I had to deal with, you grow up like me, dark and twisted, dysfunctional and undomesticated. Truthfully, there was a brief period when I stood half a chance, a couple infantile years before the real warping began. I point the finger of blame at those who exposed me at 13 years of dirt water, backwoods religious fanaticism, religious fundamentalism in its primitive, most brutal, and often most cruelest form. The perfect form of religious abuse can only be found in churches formed by the spiritually insane, held in abandoned country stores or in some member's living room, and presided over by the religious wingnut of the day. There are few things missing from these misguided meetings: God in general, Jesus in particular, the general public, a box of snakes, and the possessed gibberish associated with speaking in tongues. But in my father's never ending search to find a church he liked, we did stumble upon one where, as if on cue, everybody there started speaking in tongues. We couldn't leave that would just be rude, but we were the first out the door when it was over, and I don't think I slept for a week. Have you ever been to a church like that where they speak in tongues? I don't think I've ever been to a church like that. I don't know if I could handle all that. My father had drugged him to a mystery meeting that ended up scaring the shit out of me. I didn't eat right, my schoolwork suffered. There was nothing funny about his determination, and he got zero return on his effort. In many ways, some of these nameless churches could be compared to circuses. There was always a ringmaster who fancied himself a preacher, supported by a musically illiterate piano player faithfully cranking out hacked up religious standards on a worn out of tune piano. There were clowns who manned the doors and passed the offering plates, working diligently to separate those in attendance from their hard earned cash because most of the time next week's service depended on this week's collection. There was rent to pay, power to keep turned on, and if the money wasn't there, the church wasn't either. You can call me a skeptic if you like. As I grew up, I made little attempt to hide my disdain and openly viewed most, if not all, churches, no matter their size, as scams. A center ring surrounded by any number of sideshows, fanatics who knew little to nothing of religious dribble they spewed on a weekly basis. Their only saving grace and only chance they stood was the fact that those in attendance were just a little dumber than they were. In every case, being an attendee was the most dangerous place to sit. Everyone was, in essence, a little duck, a mark to be tricked and misled at every turn. I never believed any of it, and no amount of preaching changed that. Children brought into the spiritual cesspool were in big trouble, and we all quickly learned that asking too many questions often led to corporal punishment as a means of distraction. In other words, if they couldn't simply open you up and pour you full, they beat it into you. Either way, children either mimic their parents or learn to keep their mouths shut. Sounds like some of the churches that I went to when I was younger. I mean, that's pretty intense right there, if you ask me. This type of mental warping made an enemy out of me at an early age. I made my stood over and over, never fearing what might happen to me, and at the age of 16, I stopped going to church altogether. And I never went back. At the age of 17, I left home and stepped into a world I knew nothing about and was woefully unprepared to handle. Once again, I was an easy mark, but I wanted my freedom no matter the cost and had no way of knowing that there were evils in this world far worse than some little ill-fated religion. I wish I could say that once free and able to make my own way into this world, things got better for me and I embarked on an incredible life in an incredible world because I had made all the right decisions. Unfortunately for me, the very opposite happened. For the last few years of my teenage life, I drifted from menial job to menial job. I was looking, but I was lost. My education never passed the high school level, so I had to rely on my wits, and this set me up for failure. People took advantage of my limited intelligence, and I learned all too well that it seemed too good or easy to be true. It probably was. Those situations are best left alone, but for me, they had to be sampled. It was the only way I would know what I was dealing with. This is not the best way to pick up your path in life, and it proves that continuing education to the college level makes a huge difference in the way a person views the world. I made it no further than my high school diploma because my opposition to religion had me on the run. It robbed me of any help or support my parents may have provided that I played along with the religious requirements. But from there, where I sat, I was too smart for that. and my teenage years progressed into my early 20s. My life became a complicated mess. I was a paper boat on a raging sea as I got sidetracked by the drugs I started sampling in my late teens. You know, it's interesting how you can read other people's stories, and it's almost like they're telling your own. And it makes you kind of glad in a weird way that there are other people that understand it. You know, there are other people that, even though they had to go through certain things, they understand where you came from because we all have problems. Don't be fooled. Over time, I've learned that your drug of choice and its consequence went hand in hand. Happen to like alcohol, spend your weekends getting drunk, and you'll eventually crash your car. With that will come DWIs and other assorted charges, and I can only hope you don't hurt or kill anybody. See how simple something as complicated as alcohol can be? If you drink in the bathtub, you'll probably pass out, slip beneath the surface of the water, and drown. If your poison of choice is cocaine, chances are good you'll die from a cocaine induced heart attack. Any number of pills, sleeping pills, nerve pills, what have you, if taken in the right amount, will kill you. All of this easily can be wrote off as an accident. A lot of times the difference is one pill, and from this reality we get one pill too many theory. A single pill holds your life in the palm of its proverbial hand. One less and you sleep like a baby. One more and you die. This level of drug abuse is dangerous in and of itself, but it's not the height of drug abuse because lying out there in the wait is heroin, the mother of all illegal drugs. Heroin, by its very nature, is a complicated subject, the likes of which we are reveled in the world itself. Anyone who invites heroin into their life is living in danger and will be, in all likelihood, die. They're looking for something to make them what they're not, and heroin puts the hero in them. Unfortunately, there's no hero in heroin. We're talking about a drug that claims more victims a year than all other substances combined. It's cheap, and if you know where to look, it's readily available. It is the only illegal substance whose death toll even comes close to that of alcohol. I only see one difference between the two. Heroin can kill you instantly, while it often takes years for alcohol abuse to destroy your health. If there was one truth that I would like to get across to my readers, it would be that dreams don't always come true. I know for a fact that stress and depression are monsters that can drive you so deep into your own personal hell you never escape. The hell of depression is a life lived trapped in a dark, miserable world, and for many people, alcoholism, drug abuse, and suicide become the chosen way out. It's a very sad yet miserable truth, and while I have no plan to commit suicide, a similar fate is playing itself out in my life. I'm disappearing. I'm slowly but surely becoming invisible. With each passing day, I get harder and harder to see. People look right through me. Many treat me as if I'm thin air, as if I'm very molecular structure that no longer exists. I'm pretty sure I could go missing and nobody would know I was gone. Nobody would miss me. I don't even think God knows me. And if he took a hint from my early years, he has good reason to ignore me. It's fair to say that over the years, as an active writer, I've been drawn to characters and circumstances from my life and used them to my advantage. Titles such as The Dark Man, The Black Tar, For the Love of Heroin, and the book you're now reading are three in your face renditions of the horrors that had touched my life or the lives of those around me. I have other titles that I won't mention here because the point I'm trying to make is that a fair number of my stories are biographical in nature. You know, it's really awesome that somebody can get their perspective across in words. to really tell a story that many understand, that many have lived through. And sometimes they're unable to tell their own story, but somebody tells it in a way that's understanding, and they're like, wow, that guy gets it. That's my story. Because of the life I've lived, my subjects are seldom pretty. However, a book such as Diary of a Drug Addict is especially personal because it is meant to shed light on the connection between stress and all its forms of addiction, in all its forms. If you know what you're looking for, you'll see it. There's no point in my hammering it to shit. I've known many worlds and many living conditions. There were times when I was broke and jobless, when I slept under bridges, was constantly hungry, and wore every article of clothing I owned. Naturally, I didn't smell all that great, and I had no true friends. I spend most of my days battling depression and paranoia. I feel like a soldier wearing the same tattered armor over and over, and my weapons of choice are drugs and alcohol. During my 20s and 30s, I spent a lot of my time in bars, and I learned a lot in that environment. Bars were my school, my church, my home. They were dark and comfortable, an eerie sanctuary of sorts, and they all had their perks. I met my friends in bars and as a result learned almost everything I know about alcohol and drugs in bars. I learned to shoot heroin in the bathroom of a bar. I learned to snort cocaine in the bathroom of a bar. I met my drug connections in the bathroom of a bar. We did business in the bathroom of a bar. If I ran across something special like oxycodone or Vicodin, I found it in the bathroom of a bar. No truer words spoken. As you can see, the one thing you see these illegal substances had in common was alcohol. And I worshipped at the bar like it was an altar and the bartender was Jesus. He faithfully answered my every prayer and another shot of vodka or another round of beer. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the fact that when alcohol is your religion and you grow up drunk, you live in a fog, so you don't remember a lot of what you go through. But you know you've arrived with every bartender in town knows your name and what you drink, and you don't have to ask for your next round because your bartender knows when your glass is empty. As it turns out, I was a gluttonous drunk. I could drink anyone under the table. I could never get enough. There's always an undertow of illegal activity in the bars I chose to frequent. And once I was a regular, I heard the buzz and I knew when something special was happening. Not surprisingly, in my life is a fragile, broken testament to this truth. The downside of this environment and the substances found therein is addiction, and nobody had to tell me. The indiscriminate mixing of the illegal drugs and the alcohol can be dangerous to the point of life threatening. Knowing when to say enough and get home before passing out is a barometer that will save your life but doesn't stop your illicit alchemy from manifesting itself in very dangerous ways, such as blacking out and falling down flights of stairs, toppling all bar stools, by enduring more than my share of concussions and bouncing off door jams until it looked like I'd been on the losing end of a beatdown. Bro, did I drink with you? You're like talking my language right now. I've literally passed out in chairs, fallen over, fallen off bar stools, just you name it. It's it's crazy when you start blacking out and passing out and you're losing time and you don't remember a lot of the night before. You wake up with people that you're like, who are you and why are you next to me? By sleeping in my clothes or puking my guts out because I'd rather drink than eat. By going weeks without bathing or shaving or changing clothes. To date, I've lost 7 teeth to my mysterious seizure disorder that could well be attributed to alcoholism or drug use. Who knows? This mysterious disorder has progressed to the point that, irregardless of sedatives, I grind my teeth and clench my jaw until my teeth feels like they're going to explode. It's not for the lack of a toothbrush or a daily regime of oral health. There's something wrong in my brain with my nervous system and grinding my teeth in just one way it manifests itself. TMJ, my boy. Looking back, I can truthfully say that the desired result of the very abusive situation I put myself in was relaxation to the point of sleep. From the pills I took to the alcohol I drank, they were both comforting substances to abuse because in liberal amount they produce many continuous hours of uninterrupted sleep. In the light combination, they produced a sort of anesthesia that clung to me from day to day, and with added dosage would carry me right back into the land of Nod. There were times when I could sleep just about anywhere. This was just one of the many off-label results produced by medications I took. But sleeping doesn't allow me to forget just how fucked up my life has become. In the fog of addiction, I'm miserable when sober, content when wasted, and most happy when asleep. Many people will say that passed out is different than sleep, but to me they're always the same, and I'll just do about anything to get there. I've lived my life like the shot of a gun, and for me there is no happy ever after. I never get that far. I build every day to a certain point, and then everything I've done collapses. After 35 years of drug and alcohol abuse, I find myself without the essentials in life. My personal economy is in a direct result of my personal life, and I see that in the fact there was a time when I was homeless, jobless, penniless, and friendless. I willingly destroyed myself, and in my darkest moments clung to the one almost silly idea: where there's life, there's hope. And that's interesting that he chose that quote right there because that was a quote that I used for my practice. My practice was called Spring Hope Recovery, and I didn't steal it, but that's what the mantra was: where there's life, there's hope. Back in the day, nobody knew me would give me a job because after my first paycheck, I forgot all about work in favor of drugs and alcohol. That made me look bad, but it should come as no surprise. To say I have lifelong friends is a flat out lie. My addictions have chased away even the longest suffering friend that makes my solitary life hard to live because everybody needs friends. But I need friends for what they will give me, and nobody's going to put up with that shit very long. I won't say I carelessly use my friends because I value their place in my life, but I need them to provide the occasional provision: a couch to sleep on when it's really cold, a shower every week or so to wash off the stink, a pack of cigarettes or a pint of vodka, a $20 bill if they can spare it. Sometimes I join my most cherished friends for a meal because they know I'm hungry and graciously refuse to turn their back on me. They don't invite me to join them in church because they know how I feel about that. I rarely ask for money to buy food because I don't want to insult their intelligence. They know if I have money, I'm not going to buy food. I'm going to buy drugs and alcohol. This is wild. Hey, Jim, welcome back. Welcome back, buddy. The way I've chosen to live my life has resulted in extreme segregation. It's life without anyone. All of my friends are gone, and it took me a while to realize that I didn't have anyone around me. I drove them all away, either with outrageous behavior or dangerous drug abuse. Heroin proved to be the straw that broke the back of every relationship I ever had. Getting me alone was the monster's first step, and as soon as I was living in isolation, it set its sights on killing me. Despite how bleak my life was, I can assure you that nothing happens in a vacuum. There's a cause behind every effect, a reason for every reaction, and I've explained my situation in a manner that even the simplest mind can understand. The doctors I have faithfully visited throughout the years don't know what to make of me. I refuse conventional diagnosis. One doctor believes that I suffer from borderline personality disorder. Another one thinks I'm paranoid schizophrenic, while yet another believes I suffer from the highs and lows of bipolar coupled with a healthy dose of acute anxiety. If you only knew how many times manic depression actually proved itself to be suicidal depression. I've driven myself mad with drug abuse. I don't think any of them really know how bad off I am, and I've never been 100% honest with any of them. I'm just there for the drugs, so it should come as no surprise to learn that my disease defies all conventional medical analysis. It's conflicting. There was a time when I took a slew of medicines, trying to adjust, block, decrease, or increase different brain chemicals, all in the name of making me normal, to slow the manic highs and lows, to level me out and bring peace to my life. And there have been times when locking me away in a psych ward would have probably been the best of all available options. To make sure they don't lock me up, I avoid my doctors as much as possible. I'm at peace with their findings as well as the idea that mental illness is incurable. You can medicate it, but you can't get rid of it. It's like diabetes. Once you have it, you never get rid of it. There's a whirling in my gut that never stops and the voices in my head that refuse to shut up. In opposition to my doctor's help, I have spent my life abusing drugs of all kinds, and as is the case with so many addicts, opiates are my favorite. I'm unsure if I pressed my doctors would have quickly said that my loose screws would kill me long before my 50th birthday. Doctors mean well, and they try to cure whatever is sitting in front of them, so I respect their opinion. They're not wasting their time on me, but they're not always right. Some of their options are true. Sometimes I think they're just guessing, and I have no problem with that either. I'm all they say I am and more, and there have been several extended periods in my life when there was a doctor that was keeping me alive. Has anybody ever been there in the chat? Has anybody ever been to that part of their lives when they're kind of just dangling, barely hanging on, just wanting to get medication just to make it through? To say that I've spent my entire life abusing drugs and alcohol is true. I've been at the risk of an accidental overdose for as long as I've been able to have been an abuser. It's a miracle I'm still alive. Maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe there are varying stages of crazy and I'm suffering from one or more of them. Or maybe I'm just wired differently. Maybe the universe failed to grace me with a skill set that would allow me to get along in this world like a normal person. And as you can see, I'm anything but normal. In some ways, you could say I was a statistic looking for a place to happen. If you ask the doctors who try to medicate my demons, they would probably say it was just a matter of time before I accidentally or intentionally kill myself. The doctors have a general knowledge of my love for street drugs. I'm sure they assume I mix what they prescribe with what I find on the street. I don't push them for anything obvious because they might think I'm trying to manipulate them and cut me off completely. Needless to say, that would be a disaster. On a bad day, I think they hope I'm okay, and on a good day, I'm quite sure they don't think of me at all. As of today, I'm several months shy of my 57th birthday, so I've defied their estimates regarding my death by a good 25 years and counting. Still, I feel like I'm coming to the end of my road. In this regard, they might be right. I will probably die before I reach 60 years of age. I know that at first glance this sounds strange, but I've been thinking about it for a long time, and I think it's an end that I can live with. But before I meet such a fate, I want to write a few things down for those who may want to remember me or learn a lesson from my existence. Reading this book puts you in the thick of it. Maybe I'm trying to remove my drug drenched armor long enough to unburden my soul just once before I die. Or maybe I would like to write a few cautionary lines for anyone who might find themselves in a situation similar to mine. It's possible my state of mind is a blend of insanity, intoxication, and genius. That would look interesting on paper. The three of me carefully grafted into one for the sake of preserving a particular reality. I suffer from this savage blend that cares very little for the body it inhibits and has over time torn it to shreds. I'm not going to argue professional opinion. Doctors have their theories, and I have mine. Some say life is what you make it. Maybe they're right. But I know this nothing lasts forever. Things can change like the weather and swing from good to bad in a New York minute. All too often, they don't swing back. Looking back, I can honestly say I've tumbled through life like a barrel rolling down a hill. It's hard to pick a row when you're bouncing around like that. As a result, my life path has been a hard one. There have been good times, but that didn't last. And I enjoyed my share of lucky breaks, but they're getting harder to come by. Extended periods of my life has been tolerable. I've had my share of jobs and I've known my share of successes. Then again, a great deal of my life has been spent partying, and that's putting a good spin on it because honestly, it's been nothing more than a solitary man strung out on drugs and alcohol, and there's nothing glamorous about that. But I managed to pull it off. I've scarred where my heart was broken. I've made deals with the devil for a certain amount of guaranteed time. As a result, I lived through things that would kill most people. I've wasted my time on things intelligent people leave alone. In my early days, I lived life wide open all the time. Like I had to get all my living done by midnight. I didn't care what anybody thought, and while death was happening all around me, it didn't affect me, and it didn't scare me. Looking back, I can honestly say I wish it had. If I had tasted fear instead of pleasure, things might have turned out different. So if you're looking for a reason not to waste your time and money on drugs and alcohol, I'm your man. There's no need to lie about any of it. My life story is drenched in the gritty truth of addiction. It's ugly, but that's what gives it teeth, makes it shocking and at times gory. So, like a car wreck, it may be messy, but it's hard to look away. In my case, it's like you've shined a light on something best left in the dark, something half crazed, self destructive, with an addictive personality and absolutely no desire to amass anything in the way of worldly worth or stature. It's like I have no sense of self worth or the ability to pay myself proper attention. Once intoxicated, and I'm always intoxicated, my mind leaves my body to fend for itself. A lot of times I don't remember the things I've done or where I've been. When I had a car and I was an active drunk driver, I would check it first thing every morning to see if I hit anything, the reality of which would be realized in new dents on a well dinged up car. But then I lost my job, and shortly after, I lost my apartment, and just like that, I was living in my car. There are things I should feel sorry for, yet I make no apology for any of my actions, regardless of how crazy or selfish that may seem to be. And I'm not going to bother lying about my addictions or attempt to cover anything up. I don't think I could if I tried, so there's no point. A lot of people have tried to fix me, but there's no fixing this. I'm a lemon. If someone had asked me early on what I wanted out of life, I'd probably said something like I hope to mellow with age, clean up my act, and become a healthy man with an extended family and an interesting story to tell. But that didn't happen. Not even close. The idea that today's friends would be tomorrow's family never became a reality for me. I wanted that for myself at times, and I tried very hard to make it happen. I've known my fair share of wonderful, beautiful women, but none of them stuck to me, and I guess it's fair to blame my drug use for that. Only women with a love for drugs and alcohol equal to my own would put up with my crap. Those women are out there, but they're very hard to find, even harder to entertain, because their attention span is short and about as short as it can get. And the bottom line is the same as mine. We're only interested in the drugs and will go anywhere, alone or all together, just to get our fix. They do, however, make good drinking buddies, and they haven't lost their beauty to drugs and alcohol. Being seen out in public with them, it's not a problem. So, what do y'all think? What do y'all think about this book so far? I'm digging it. I'm liking it. Straightforward and to the point. Straightforward and to the point. You know, one thing, hearing another person's struggles, it reminds you of your own. It reminds you how far you came and how difficult it was to get there. You know, there's a lot of times when people say, well, life is what you make it. Well, it is to an extent, but also at the same time, the way you react to life a lot of time dictates where you're going. So, whatever you make it, are you making it with a clear head or are you making it with an intoxicated vision of what you feel life should be? Awesome, guys. Thank you for your comments. This is not easy to say, but I've enjoyed my life in the presence of female companionship. I've known my fair share of girlfriends, but that's all they were, girlfriends. Our relationships never matured, so they never progressed beyond that stage. As a result, I grew up unattached and obsessed with things I should have left alone. Oh, I can relate to that. Somewhere along the line, I lost my love for life and my hope for a better tomorrow. I'm in real danger of losing my life to substances I freely chose, but now I have no control over. Could this be my dreams coming true? I don't consider myself lucky despite the fact that I've survived 4 decades of drug and alcohol abuse. I've failed to treasure life the way healthy people do, and I didn't appreciate what a precious phenomenon life truly is. I don't I don't believe a lot of us do. I think a lot of us feel that we always have more time to get it right. Simply put, I lost my thread and willingly embraced the darkness, but now the wear and tear is getting to me. I'm exhausted and my age is slowing me down. At the time, at the same time I can't help but feel there's something more to my problem. Dysfunction doesn't begin to plumb the depths of my psychosis, and to be honest, the bottom line is this. I haven't worked in years and I've moved around a lot, so I've put down few roots. Some romantically call it wanderlust, but that doesn't do it justice. In my case, it's chronic addiction. I suffer from multiple drug intoxication, and this sad reality ran my life off the rails at an early age. It was permanent fix to temporary problems. I tripped, fell down, and never got back up. Now it feels like I'm falling apart at the seams, like I'm suffering from the bad seamstress blues, like the last stitch holding me together is about to break. What will I do then? I have no place to call home, and I haven't cared where I ended up for a long time. I'm going to fall apart on the street, under a bridge, and nobody's going to know the difference. It's no stretch of the imagination to say that I wear out my welcome everywhere I go. As a result, those willing to call me friend are few and far between. Though determined to live drug free life, moved far enough away to be out of my reach or made their anti drug stance known in the way that made it obvious they didn't want me around. Over time, I lost their phone numbers, or they changed the numbers and slowly dug it. Slowly, drug addicts took their place. I let the right ones out and the wrong ones in. At the same time, I'm no stranger to being alone. I've learned to battle through extended bipolar episodes and periods of extreme intoxication by myself, which brings up the possibility that I suffer from schizophrenic melancholy. It's reasonable to assume that my drug abuse has me growing old before my time. As a result, there are times when I just want to lay down, go to sleep, and never get up. In fact, not waking up would have its advantages. No need to look for shelter, money, drugs, alcohol, or food. No worry about the weather or how I'm going to get to spend the day or what might happen to me at night. This is the short list by which the homeless drug addict lives. We can't handle anything else. I've sold everything I've ever owned, found, or stolen for money to buy drugs. This is the short sighted nature of being a drug addict, living in a drug infested world. Addiction requires money, so the short list always stems from a lack of money. I don't have a lot of money. I'm not good at making things. I've had my fair share of jobs, but none of them really stuck. So I never developed any real skills, never saved any money. When I was younger, I worked on farms during construction. However, I have known plenty of times when there was no job to be had, when the money don't work out, when I found myself stuck with vodka and nothing else. It's hard to get a good night's sleep on vodka and nothing else. Wow, that's pretty intense. That's pretty freaking intense. What do y'all think? Hey George, how you doing? Thank you for being here, buddy. Yeah, a lot of times whenever you're trying to get sober, it's it's difficult to say the least. Just like he was speaking of in his book. And if you just joined us, this is a book called The Life of a Drug Addict. Um, and this individual is telling his story. He's telling the story of living on the street. At this point, he's lost everything in his life. I've never been homeless, so I can't even sit here and say that I know what that would feel like. You know, at some point you think, well, this is as low as life can get, but it can always get lower for some reason for some people. And Jim, you're right. You don't truly sleep when you're boozed up. You're right about that. That kind of sleep is awful because you just can't stop dreaming. You're so relaxed, but you're sitting there dreaming, and your body's trying to get the poison out of it. So your organs are working extra hard, but you don't feel it. But you wake up the next day and you feel like crap, dehydrated, out of it. Yeah, it's called Life of a Drug Addict. And it's on Amazon. Amazon Kindle. That's where I'm reading it from. I think you can download it to your Kindle, or you can buy the book and you can read it from the Kindle section of the Amazon website. Um, Recovery's hard, George. Recovery's hard, but if you're ready, anything's possible, buddy. One day at a time. And for what it's worth, if you want to come in here and get some positivity, this is a good place to be. On normal nights, we don't talk about recovery or anything like that. We talk about true crime, but you're more than welcome to come in anytime you'd like. Thank you for reaching out. So yeah, let me put your comment on the screen. You said, I know what it feels like, and I had everything, and it does get lower and lower, not for some people, for addicts. And if you're an addict, you reach that point because the disease addiction is cunning, powerful, and baffling. You're so right. Thank you. The same to you, buddy. The same to you. And that part right there that you said, about it being cunning, baffling, and powerful, It shows to me that you've been either exposed to some kind of treatment or you've been reading and you've actually gained an understanding of what that means, because the cunning part of it is we're oblivious to the fact that it feels good. The baffling part is us thinking that we can use one more time without any consequence. And the powerful part is that we're not powerful enough to say no without help, support, and guidance outside of our realm of understanding. It's addiction's an ugly thing, man. It really is. While I was fighting my own addiction, I would think the way this man is thinking with alcohol. I can just drink a little bit, or I can just, escape into the bottle and, everything will be better. Rent due tomorrow? Well, but I want to have fun. I can tell my landlord a lie, pay half the rent, and then try to hustle in a couple weeks to pay the rest of the money that I'm about to blow by going and having a good time. Everything was always about having a good time. Some kind of crisis would always be coming up, but it wasn't about facing the crisis head on. It was about escaping the responsibility by having a good time. And it never made it any better having a good time, running from responsibilities. It took me a long time to realize that because I didn't like to pay bills. I was one of those that didn't like to pay bills. I didn't like to pay bills. I didn't like to, or I'd pay half the bill and then worry about why I had a late fee and why would they were going to cut off my electricity if I didn't pay, or they were going to cut off my water, or I paid this amount. How come the late fees keep mounting up? How come this bill is quadruple? All that good stuff. Well, I can't answer that for you, but I can tell you that I understand that, and it's perfectly normal. It was for me. I mean, I'm hard headed as they come. I couldn't surrender. I couldn't say that I had a problem. And that was my part of not being able to commit. You are not going to get me to say I had a problem with alcohol or anything else. You were my problem. Life was my problem. People were my problem. There was nothing wrong with me. I enjoyed drinking. That's what I would tell people. People are my problem. At least healthy people were my problem. Unhealthy people, I'd flock to them wherever they were. But that kept me from committing, George. It really did. It kept me from committing to the program. I always used to tell my clients it's not about admitting powerlessness. It's about respecting the alcohol, the drugs. If you respect something, you're not going to feel that it's more powerful than you because it's an equal playing field, you know? And one thing that kept me from committing is having to say I was going to be an alcoholic for the rest of my life. Everywhere I went, I was going to have to tell people I'm an alcoholic. Hell to the no. There's no way those words are ever coming out of my mouth, I used to say. No damn alcoholic. What's wrong with you? I just like having a good time. But everything that's set up to hurt you, like you're talking about suffering, we don't realize we're suffering because the pleasure that it brings to us. When we realize that pleasure is really not pleasure, it's artificial pleasure, then we start understanding that there's better things in life, you know? Yeah, good point, Jim. Good point. Yeah, we all have to reach our proverbial bottom on our own, you know? It's hard, it's easy for us to support people and share our story, but, sometimes it's hard for people to reach that realm of understanding that, if it's been a good run, it's been fun, but now I got to put it away. I got to do something else. Yes, indeed, sir. Yes, indeed. Don't try to eat it too fast, and don't try to eat too much at one time. Just ingest what makes sense to you. Find somebody that can explain it to you where it makes sense to you. That way, you'll really understand it. Because there's a lot of people that are going to throw slogans at you. They're going to throw a lot of stuff at you, and it's going to aggravate you because you see how happy they are, and you're like, well, how the hell are they so happy? Well, I'm sitting here miserable. I'm angry. I'm frustrated. And they're saying, live and let live. Just let go and let God. Pray about it. All these things. When you're in that frame of mind, when you're trying to get it, try to remember it's a very simple program. Sometimes the best thing that you can do is just get honest with yourself and let go. Take a breath. Be still. Let the answers come to you. Sometimes they don't have to be searched for. Just be still. Take a breath. And be kind to yourself because you're doing something that's hard. It's going to take some time. Don't beat yourself up and find some good support. It'll happen for you. It really will. Just don't beat yourself up if you don't feel it automatically. It's normal. All this stuff that you're going through is normal. I don't know how much sobriety you have, or I don't know if you have very much or whatever, but don't ever feel that each step you're taking forward is a mistake because you're further along than you've ever been, probably. We all stumble. We need people to be there to pick us up when we do. Don't give up. It's a process, not perfection. And you're right. God will heal you. Make your program your own. So it's kind of like routine rather than a program. It's something that you do on a daily basis. Even if you didn't have this problem, you'd still get up and do this routine to keep yourself grounded and safe. Well, George, I wish you the best of luck, buddy, and I will hold you in my prayers. Keep coming back. We're some good people in here. Jim, have a good night. Rondi, you have a good night as well. As any of you that have been listening that hasn't been in the chat, thank you so much for attending this book reading. I will read some more. Not quite sure when, but I hope that y'all have a wonderful night. And as I always say, Maestro, cue that music.